Police Squad in color. Starring Leslie Nielsen. Also starring Alan North. And Rex Hamilton as Abraham Lincoln. Tonight's special guest star, William Shatner.
Hey, you.
Tonight's episode, The Guilty Alibi.
Welcome to From the Files of Police Squad in color. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is Mr. Chris Dashew.
I went to the movies on the waterfront.
Also with us is Mr. Mark Begley.
Is this some kind of bust?
Yes, man, very impressive. On this episode, we are talking about Revenge and Remorse. It was the fourth episode shot. The fourth episode aired, though it aired before the third episode. We could just go crazy with how this
Just like
going.
The Prisoner. Just like The Prisoner. The Prisoner was even
I'm glad
worse.
it's only those two that are swapped, though, because I would have a real hard time keeping track of things if any more had been swapped.
Special guest star William Shatner, who avoids getting shot, but then he ends up either choking or getting poisoned. I imagine it's poison, but I kind of wish that he had just taken a bite and then he chokes on the food. But it was a drink that he drinks, and then he does that great thing in slow motion. What for you guys as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The post-production slow motion, which I absolutely hate.
Yeah, that was weird.
Drink poisoned by Leonard Nimoy, coincidentally.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense, you know.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Directed by Paul Krasny, written again by Nancy Steen and Neil Thompson. I'm not sure if Pat Proft was involved with this one or not, but yes, this is the fourth episode, and this one is all about a mad bomber who is going around killing all of the people involved in a particular court case, and I think it is the court case of Mr. Casales, whose name really rings a bell.
I wanted to mention something that I don't think we've talked about. Part of the credits that confused me as a kid and confuses me to this day is the Abraham Lincoln bit. And I think, Mike, early on, you mistakenly said Rex Harrison.
Yes.
Who is who I always thought it was because I knew that name. And then I'm like, well, wait, no, who's Rex Hamilton? Because I'm not familiar with this guy. What's the joke here? And so I finally looked him up, and he'd never done anything except be Abraham Lincoln in the opening credits of Police Squad. Shouldn't it be someone familiar like Rex Harrison? I don't know.
Well, that's the gag. That guy is an Abraham Lincoln impersonator in real life. That's,
Okay.
That was the whole gag.
That makes sense.
I guess it'd be if they were and Hal Holbrook as Mark Twain, but Hal Holbrook has the whole career apart from Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Chris
That's
Elliott
a deep cut.
as FDR.
Yeah.
That's a deeper cut.
Yeah.
I thought it was Alan Rickman as Richard Nixon. Or is that who he plays in that movie? Or does he play LBJ?
Was that W or something else?
No, it's that Forrest Whitaker movie where he plays the butler in the White House.
Oh, okay. Gosh, man, I remember when that was supposed to be a big deal. Was that Lee Daniels directing that?
I think so.
I don't even know who Lee Daniels is, but it was all over Lee Daniels, the butler. I was like, okay.
A movie to change the times.
Yes. All right. I don't know what I'm getting confused with, but there's this whole gag in here of these walking feet. And we start off the episode with these walking feet, and we get the walking feet 3 times, I think. Again, the law of threes when it comes to comedy. I kept writing in my notes, hopscotch. I kept waiting for those walking feet to hit a hopscotch thing and then do hopscotch. I don't know if that's in another episode or if it's
in the movie.
It's going to be in the movie. Okay, that's...
It's the whole, and where the hell was I? It's that whole thing where it's like he's voiceovering and it shows him walking and then it shows him doing hopscotch and it shows him walking off the end of the sidewalk, which is one of my favorite gags in the whole movie. He's like, and where the hell was I? And he's like essentially overlooking LA at the Hollywood sign. But yeah, you're remembering it from the movie. I was expecting it in the episode too.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it, but I did like what we got going over the chair.
Yes.
Inexplicably.
Right. And then over the table. And that was pretty good. Replacing the gavel with the exploding gavel. That was good. And we've got Frank back in his car at the beginning of this. He was getting his car washed. So we've got the guy in the back still washing his car that he got pulled away from. Goes to headquarters. My boss was already on the scene. And this whole thing of coffee, Frank, donut, Frank, and then the way that they walk through that commissary line and they're just picking up prime rib and all that.
Sitting there eating a slice of prime rib. Leslie Nielsen is throughout the entire scene.
Yes.
He is just munching down on that slice of prime rib the whole scene. I appreciate, because again, we talked about the lack of continuity, and there's a continuity gag in this episode where it's check your jacket. And, check your jacket. And that disappears immediately. But I appreciate that they leave it with them eating food. And he's just sitting, eating a slice of prime rib for like damn near 2 or 3 minutes.
They go through all the suspects and they're listing off all of these names until they get to Casalis. Casalis? That name rings a bell. And all of the different bells that are going off.
Typewriter, yeah.
Such a stupid gag, but I fucking love it.
It's like the on the waterfront gag. It's like it's that literal interpretation thing, but done in the right way.
There's no movie theaters down at the waterfront. Oh God!
I liked early on when we see those feet and then we see the gloved hands, and again, cop show type stuff here. You're scrolling down the directory to find what you want to find, but the person's like dragging all the letters and numbers off.
That was good.
You don't usually see stuff like that. I like that. I appreciated that.
You can see some of these jokes coming a mile away. He was a model prisoner. And then,
yes.
Of course, yeah. Or the whole thing of his wife, Lana Casalis, the way that she's boxing up all the stuff for the widows and orphans, and then taking all of their clothes, and then they cut to them walking out, and they're just in their shirts and underwear. That stuff works.
I actually really like the gag where they're in the dressing room of his wife. She's like, let me go change. She goes behind the thing and comes out, and it's a different actress. The rest of the episode. Yeah. The rest of the entire episode, it's somebody else.
Well, it was weird because when she starts to talk, I was like, that doesn't sound like her voice. So I think they ADR'd the original actress, the second actress over the first actress. Her voice doesn't change when she comes out from behind that changing panel.
That's a really good gag, though. Like it just is and it stays throughout the entire episode. They don't walk it back, which again, for all the continuity problems that they do on purpose, there are some things that they don't walk back.
Oh yeah,
I was expecting a third actress when they met up with her again.
Yeah, I kind of was expecting there to be a further twisting of the dial, and there wasn't. Which, I don't know, that's showing some restraint maybe, or maybe they just couldn't come up with another funny gag. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both.
I think it would have worked with a completely different actress again, maybe not going back to the original gal. That's what I was expecting and hoping for.
I think it could have worked pretty well. I mean,
her name is Mimi du Jour, but now she goes by Mimi Coffee.
Isn't du jour? What does du jour mean?
Of the day.
Day. Yeah. I think it's just to get to the coffee gag. Okay. So it's Mimi du jour. Now it's Mimi Coffee. Coffee? No, thank you.
Oh.
It's kind of like the cigarette gag. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, that is as far as it ends up going.
We've got another coffee gag in this one, which is talking about coffee commercials. My doctor says I have to switch to decaf.
Yeah, that was a good gag.
And this is, I think maybe somebody was referring to him mugging in the next episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
This coffee commercial bit, when they bring it back, is part of that mugging that, again, I don't know if it'll continue, into 5 and 6, but definitely we get there eventually in the movies for sure.
Pretty quickly into that second one, and probably in the first one a lot as well. Even there's a lot of mugging for the camera. It's again, there are a few people who do the mugging as well as Leslie Nielsen.
Mm-hmm.
Funny face, as they would call him. That's not what makes this comedy funny, for me at least. It's the fact that he has to be the straight man while delivering the jokes. That's the thing. Like, he's the straight man and he's the comedian. And that's what's always worked for me with Leslie Nielsen. And there are very few, if any, other actors who can do it as well as him. Like, it's a very unique expectation as your lead for what he does in this show and in Naked Gun. And in Airplane, frankly. It's kind of Leslie Nielsen's, I would say, claim to fame for how his comedy worked, I think, is if you knew how to write for him, this is how you write for him. It's just, don't sell the jokes.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't sell
jokes.
them either. Yeah. Even if you're writing jokes, it's like, you can't laugh. It's not funny. Like, this is sell it straight. Do not break. Even when it's in the first movie and Nordberg is, he's essentially killing Nordberg over and over again by accident. It's not funny. He's not laughing. Like, but it is funny what he's doing. And that, when the show taps into that idea, and the show, I think, is doing a very good job of tapping into it, it really works.
We already mentioned the on the waterfront thing. I do really appreciate that Casales' joke, that his coat says Penn State, and then on the back it says State Penn, which is nice.
Well, and I like that they do the on the waterfront gag 3 times in the movie, at least.
And they already made an on the waterfront gag in the second episode.
Well, I'm just talking about in this episode itself, that they do it towards the end.
Right.
Right? Because he's like, where were you? And he's like, well, that's not what your wife said. But I guess they don't say on the waterfront at that point, though.
He wasn't seeing the movies. He was over watching a baseball game, breaking his parole.
I guess that makes sense.
I want to know what the hell Olsen is doing to that cat.
Right? Drowning the cat or something?
Because he is talking about gills and lungs and the difference and how...
Is he trying to show how cats can't breathe underwater?
Yes.
That's what it seems like, yes. Would you like to keep them? Next week I'll show you why women can't play professional football.
Oddly, consistently misogynistic.
Yes. But not pervy this time.
Not pervy. No, not pervy,
For
just
once.
misogynist.
They got some angry letters. I'm sure.
Oh, man.
They might get angry letters about the pasties on Mimi's
On the
door.
door.
Yes.
There were some good visual gags in this episode. That was one of them for sure.
Yes, which I don't think at 12 years old I probably got.
No.
So
I also like the gag at the end of, all right, we've caught her, now run her in.
Yeah.
that was one of those, like the model prisoner one, where where
Right.
the joke is going as soon as he says it's like, oh, well, they're going to run. Nice addition of the starter blocks, but still.
Oh, yeah, but that's what makes it a good gag. That and the gag of the guy in the tree is another good one, which is just, that I like that again. They're not like, oh my God, there's a guy in the tree, there's his watch. It's just, he just checks the watch in his face. That for me, that kind of joke, that kind of approach to telling that joke is the ZAZ way of doing it.
Oh, yeah.
It's just part of the world. There's no lantern hanging. We're not acknowledging that this is a gag or a joke. And that's when these kinds of projects that they work on work the best, is when they don't acknowledge that it's a gag. Like in Airplane, they weren't like, holy shit, it's an inflatable autopilot. It's just an autopilot and you got to blow it up, and its blow tube happens to be right where its dick is, because of course it is.
Other telegraph jokes, the radio announcer choking on the smoke from the car bomb. I was like, okay, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. But then you get some great visual gags, like the tow truck is one of my favorites. And then the other one is the Club Flamingo, which it took me a few minutes to figure out that the man was clubbing the flamingo.
The Club Flamingo joke is fucking great.
And what did he say? Like, she told me to come to the club tonight or something, but
Right away.
Come to the club right away, yeah. But there was no club right away.
There was no club right away.
The tow truck was a groaner for me. I was like, oh, it's going to be a big tow. Yep,
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even really a truck.
No, it was more of a car. The tow vehicle.
It was a golf cart.
You don't know how hard it is ratting out the guy that you love. And I was waiting for him to just be like, oh, and start telling that whole next story about how he had to do that once.
I was expecting an actual rat to factor into it somehow, just given this show's literalism.
Yeah.
There was a repeat gag from the last episode and this one where they do the let's say bit.
Oh boy, a lot.
Yeah, and they did it 2 or 3 times in the last episode and 2 or 3 times in this one. And I was like, like you say, Mike, watching stuff back to back with intent, it probably wouldn't strike you if you're just watching it on a weekly basis, or you start watching the show in March and you have to return to it in July, ad breaks and all that. But I was like, oh, that's the exact same gag.
We didn't mention in the last episode when he's talking about what a cesspool the city is, and the one guy's like, Frank, I'm trying to eat a tuna fish sandwich.
I'm talking to my mom. The Club Flamingo comes up again with Al wearing the shirt. I loved that little bit too.
I never picked that up.
Yeah, because he's like, a lot of guys from the force go there, and then he just like walks into frame, stands there, and then just walks back out of frame. That's the only gag. That's the only Al gag in this entire episode.
I thought this was the long hair.
This is the long hair one, yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Where he walks.
Yeah.
He's trying something new, guys.
It's against regulations.
You were talking about the eating gag?
Yeah, the eating gag with how loud they're eating and smacking their lips and everything.
It was hilarious.
It's so gross.
Yeah, I have a thing about eating noises, though, so that kind of drove me nuts, but I did appreciate the humor of it.
It made me laugh really hard because they don't draw any attention to it other than the fact that they're doing it.
Right.
And the fact that the cart is really loud, too. That's it. It's just them. Oh, what are they eating? Like, it sounds like they're drinking pudding from a cup, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, the slurps.
Yeah, it's real. And this is, they're eating donuts and drinking coffee, but it sounds like they're just, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's so exaggerated in the, I think, other than maybe, it triggering you.
I mean, the jokes are coming very fast and furious in this one. The whole mug file, and then the phone cord that's super long. And then I think the eating gag comes up. And I think right before that, we had Johnny, and we have, of course, he's right on top of everything. And then Dr. Joyce Brothers.
Right? Because why not?
I remember more celebrity cameos for the Johnny gags, and I'm like, oh, this is our first one.
Yeah.
I know there's at least one more because I know who it is. I can think of it, but I'm curious if we go back to a normal person, or the last 3 will be celebrities, or the last 2, I should say.
If I had to guess right offhand, I would say Mel Torme.
I know Tommy Lasorda is one, and I don't know who the other one was, and I think you mentioned Mel Torme.
Yes.
I think Dick Clark shows up at one point.
Oh, God.
Maybe it's Dick Clark then.
Is it Dick Clark in the Johnny gag? I think it might be. The Johnny gag goes on for quite some time this time around.
Yeah.
Well, he's got to explain the Cinderella.
Right, no, I mean, I appreciated that. It was
Cinderell Complex.
I appreciated that it just kept going.
She was another mainstay on daytime TV back in the day, on every talk show and whatever else.
Well, I think she would show up even on, like, Happy Days and stuff, make weird random cameo appearances whenever anybody needed help.
Yeah, which doesn't really make sense. Was she doing it in the 50s and early 60s? I don't know. Maybe she was. I just remember her from my childhood.
Yeah, no, to your point, she's an anachronism.
Wasn't there a show at some point, or was that after this? The Dr. Joyce Brothers show. Isn't that a thing?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it came after this show, though. I just think it's funny that she shows up. It's just so goddamn nonchalant. I need you to tell me about the Cinderell Complex. He just goes, so rattles it all off. Johnny, the alleyway expert.
Women are afraid of their own success. Yeah. Well, let's see. She was Dr. Joyce Brothers in Taxi. She was Dr. Joyce Brothers in this, of course. Oh, she wasn't Dr. Joyce Brothers at WKRP in Cincinnati. I mean, wow. Yeah, her filmography. Yes, Spunkless Spunky, the episode of Happy Days. She was in that as Dr. Joyce Brothers.
Spunkless Spunky.
Yes.
I don't know what that means,
Well,
but I
they
can make some
didn't think that one
guesses.
through. Very
Yeah.
Spunk, huh?
Fonzie and friends try to dig up what's depressing his faithful canine companion Spunky, while Howard saddles Marion with 100 pounds of potatoes to peel for his Leopard Lodge's picnic potato salad.
Hey.
Oh, Howard.
Hey, we're going to be seeing Dr. Joyce Brothers again in the original Naked Gun.
That makes sense.
It does. Like, it's fucking wild. She was in Loaded Weapon 1 earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's in so much stuff in the 90s, in the 80s. Like, that's, yeah, you mentioned she's an anachronism, but not an anachronism enough, I don't think.
And she was also in Spy Hard. I mean, she shows up in all these things. This is crazy. Here's something I never knew existed. Police Academy, the series.
Who wants that?
I mean, how many police academies are there?
Yeah.
Is it just 20 minutes of Michael Winslow going boop, for 20 minutes? Because I would watch that in a heartbeat. I would not watch. Who wouldn't even be Steve Guttenberg? It'd be like, what, Bobcat Goldthwait? Is he in it? Who plays the Guttenberg character in the show? It's not Steve Guttenberg.
David McNaughton.
What was his character's name?
Maybe he's not in the show.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like Steve? Was it just Steve? Steve.
Make it easy for me.
Just call me my name. Carrie Mahoney.
There is a brand new class of screw-ups at the police academy. They face danger and try not to let their stupidity get in the way as they fight crime. Okay.
That sounds like Police Squad.
Yeah. Joe Flaherty's in this. Michael Winslow is in it.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Not saying Michael Winslow needs to get paid, but this show was in 1997.
Wow.
Tim Kazurinsky even shows up for one appearance.
Who in 1997 was like, yes, the characters of Police Academy?
I mean, Paul Maslansky's still trying to get a reboot off the ground.
There were 25 episodes.
This thing ran an hour an episode.
Oh,
It wasn't even a half-hour show.
No. Oh,
And
dear
here's-
God.
Neil Israel and Pat Proft were two of the big writers.
There's the next limited series, right? Said
Podcast.
no one.
Sign up, guys, today.
God, and the fact that it came out in 97, because the first Police Academy came out in what? The late 80s?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Mid to late, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason.
87, 86.
I will say that there is kind of a reason the Naked Gun movies work. They are of a certain time and of a certain place. I've only seen the first of Police Academy, and it kind of works because it's a mid-'80s movie. I can't imagine that formula working. Just like I really can't imagine, to bring it back to Naked Gun, and I kind of mentioned it the last couple times, I can't really imagine a new version of Naked Gun working at all. Even though I'm interested because it's Liam Neeson, who could have that energy, and I've seen him do in the what's the Warwick
The Ricky
Davis show?
Gervais? Yes.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God, he's so good in that.
He's hilarious.
I'm always making lists.
He's really funny, but that style of humor, I think, was of a certain time and place, the mid 80s to mid 90s. I think Mafia is kind of the tail end of that. Scary Movie kind of reboots it a little bit. I don't see the need for Naked Gun anymore the way it was. Maybe they do something different, but this kind of comedy kind of only worked when you could look at the show that it was referencing and be like, all right, enough people know what this is that we can parody this and people will get it.
The original Police Academy was 1984, by the way. So I think that this kind of paved the way for that.
Even earlier, yeah.
Yeah.
Would that be under the category of boner comedy? Police Academy?
I mean, I get a boner while watching it, but...
Well, there you go.
Isn't the first one a John Hughes movie?
No.
No.
Am I crazy? No, it's not, right?
No. I know Miss Lansky was behind the whole thing. I can't remember who directed that first one.
Man, why did I think it was a John Hughes movie?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think if he's done anything in a similar vein, but I can't.
Yeah. It was Hugh Wilson that directed it, and it was Pat Proft and Neil Israel that wrote it.
Were they responsible for Bachelor Party?
I believe... Yes, they were. As well as at least one of the Look Who's Talking movies.
Oh. And you mentioned Real Genius as well, because I actually listened to that episode of your show and then watched Bachelor Party later that day, totally by coincidence.
I haven't seen Bachelor Party since it was out originally, and I remember not liking it, but I was 12 years old.
It's not my favorite.
That's the one that has Tom Hanks in it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's playing a heel, which...
Oh, okay, Tom Hanks.
Work.
Even now it doesn't work. He was in the Elvis movie as Colonel Tom Parker, and he's fucking atrocious. It's like, Tom Hanks, you're too lovable, man. You're too much of a nice guy. Like, I'm sorry.
I mean, he was a pretty good murderer in Road to Perdition.
But that's mob stuff. You can always be sympathetic for the mobsters.
I know. All your life, all you ever wanted to be was a gangster.
Now I'm just a
Schnooky Lumps?
Schnooky Lumps, yeah.
Now I'm just a Schnooky Lumps. So do you guys recognize the guy that plays, is it Eddie Casales?
Oh, that name rings a bell.
I was like, I know this actor. And so I had to look him up. He was the dad character in Land of the Lost, which was a fucking all-timer for me back then, back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah. I used to watch that pretty religiously. I want to.
Are you guys talking about the 2009 Will Ferrell film?
No, there was a TV show in the 70s.
You guys remember that fucking movie? Holy shit.
Just watched part of it on an airplane. Appropriate airplane viewing.
I saw it in theaters.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, man.
Another joke that I think they reuse in, maybe it's one of the Naked Guns and might be in a Scary Movie, is the whole "there's nothing to see here, please disperse," where it's just two people and Norberg using the loudspeaker right at their faces.
The crowd of two.
Right.
I think that might be the second one.
I guess that makes sense, because that's also where is this some kind of a bust? I think that's in the second movie as well.
Yeah, because the first movie is the one with the nice beaver.
Right. And thanks, I just had it stuffed.
Which is like, that's an all-time gag.
Oh, God, yes. And I like this one, too, when the captain is chasing all the people out onto the street because there's the bomb, and then you hear the car crash and all of the detritus coming back up.
Well, that leads to a great gag with the discovery of who the Mad Bomber is.
Yes.
The gag isn't who it is, but how they're dressed.
Yes.
Because every time prior to this, you see the suit legs and the dress shoes, the suit arms as well. And she has, Lana, the ex-wife, has that over her dress.
I love the sleeves.
I had to say, that was an LOL for me.
That is when this show, for me, really hits it out of the park. Is when it does stuff like that, where it's like, we're going to do it throughout the entire episode and pay it off in the end in the most ridiculous way possible. Because that is the most ridiculous outcome. For her to have just, exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, suit sleeves and legs.
So good.
And dress shoes. Men's dress shoes.
Right.
Another gag. It's a literalism gag, but I think it kind of works here is, all right, let the bomber take off.
Right.
It's so fucking stupid. It's so fucking stupid. When they don't do it, every other gag is a literalism gag, they work. But if they do the Robert Wool's school of writing where it's every other or every single gag, you got to space it out even more than every other gag. It's got to be like every couple gags. You can't just do literalism every time. Like then you'll get episode 2 of the show where it was a literalism buffet.
Well, the best jokes for you are the ones that are plays on word. Oh, piece of cake for Lieutenant. Oh, no thanks, I just ate.
Or like a mug file, like stuff like that, where it's a word gag, but it's not even front and center in the scene. Like, I appreciate where there's stuff going on, and there are word-based gags or other things going on in the background. I appreciate that more than da 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 da, and then cut to the thing, or pan the camera to the right, and there it is. Like, can't do that every gag, because even the movie doesn't do it. I mean, that's what makes the movie like Airplane so good, is it's not just they're on instruments, that gag over and over. They break it up with some different styles of jokes.
I do like that the mug file is just a strip of paper on the one cabinet. Nothing else has a label on it. Top-notch set design, guys.
And in this one, this picks up, like I was saying in the very first episode. Now we've got the references to Sally Decker, to Martin from, I think, the second or third movie or episode, and then Gunderson. So we hear about the criminals. We're in the fourth episode, and we hear about the first three criminals all up at Statesville Prison. You
mentioned that, and that was one of the confusing things about the order that they aired. And have they done that in each epilogue? Because I don't remember. Obviously, they wouldn't have done it on the first episode.
It wasn't in the third episode, but it was definitely in the second.
And Gunderson was...
That was the fake Blofeld.
Yeah, that was Dutch Gunderson.
Oh, his name was Gunderson? Dutch Gunderson? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I think you hear that fake John.
That's fake Blofeld.
I assumed he was Italian. I'm sorry. So
right. I think that's the joke, is that he looks so Italian and talks so Italian, but his name is Dutch Gunderson.
It's a good name. It's a good fake name.
And I missed that gag completely.
Well, I like how they have those little reoccurring gags at the end of the episode. They don't really go anywhere.
Well, that whole thing of she's going to have to build her bombs up at the Statesville prison, or he's going to have to run his crime ring from Statesville prison. And it's like, this one was another freeze frame gag that I so remembered, of Nordberg coming in and realizing that he's in the freeze frame and then trying to pose with them. The whole posing with the cup of coffee is one of my favorite gags.
Was this the one that had a noticeable cut right before they did the freeze frame?
They all do. They all have like a little like...
okay.
It cuts because they do the freeze frame and then they cut and then they pick it back up with them freeze framing again.
I hadn't noticed it before this.
It's really pronounced in this one.
Yeah, I haven't noticed it before this one either.
Now I'm going to have to go back and watch all the other ones. The one thing that jumped out at me was... similar to the what's on first or who's on first type of gag that they did in the first episode, where Nordberg brings in the lunch order. We've got them interrogating Eddie, but it's matching up with his lunch order.
You expect me to swallow that? That's the line that stuck out to me.
I'll eat it, but I don't think I should be expected to pay for it.
Fine, I'll cover the coffees.
I never picked up on this, which is the line, they got ran out of town like common pygmies.
That was another fucking wild episode.
Yeah, I guess it was in the first. Yeah, that's what they said. That's what the trivia said.
What a wild callback, right?
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of thing I appreciate, where like I'm not even really cognizant of it being a gag, unlike the cigarette gag. That's going to be the thorn in my side of this whole thing, is that it's like, every time we got to have the fucking cigarette gag.
Well, and the thing is, it's the cigarette gag, but it's not the cigarette gag like the owl gag where it's transformed even a little bit. It's just, it's just the cigarette gag. I think that's the problem. If it's like the owl gag, at least they're trying stuff and maybe it doesn't work, but the cigarette gag is just the same thing. Every time. Was it part of the style Bible? You got to do it once.
Well, that's why I'm like, I guess that's the gag, though, is it's the exact same gag every time. And it's always him to a female, either witness or suspect, and bad wigs again. And all.
Oh, very bad wigs. We didn't talk about her outfit in the last episode, where it looks like she's dressed like a showgirl.
With the floozy?
Yeah, the floozy with the red... Stella, was that her name?
Yeah, of course.
Another On the Waterfront reference.
Yeah.
Well, that
There-
one's actually Streetcar.
That was that episode. No, that was this episode.
That was this episode, wasn't it?
On the waterfront was.
Yeah, but
Right.
they said Stella in the last episode.
That's Streetcar.
Oh,
That's
right.
right. Wrong Brando movie.
Yeah, Brando movie nonetheless, though.
Exactly.
I know that we like the Act 2 Brute joke, but Act 2 Richard III is also a very funny title gag.
I liked Act 2 Bless You quite a bit.
That is a good one. I mean, look, that's the kind of joke that I am a fan of. I know, and like I'm a huge homer for that kind of shit, but it always makes me laugh harder than most everything else. All those gags in The Simpsons, the same thing. Like any of the visual wordplay or like word-driven gags are always the things in The Simpsons that stand out to me that I remember over everything else.
Well, I'm always looking at the signs and the backgrounds and stuff. Like in the last episode, at one point, it says an abandoned locksmith.
Right. Yeah.
Also in that one, like the first guy to get shaken down was a butcher. And so I'm looking at all the things on the butcher shop, seeing if some of those were jokes. I didn't notice any jokes, but I'm just
I
like,
don't think there were any.
are there jokes back there? Like,
Well, it's like the mug file thing, right? Like
oh yeah.
mug file. And yeah, he's got the 4 coffee cups. Like that, again, it's a little on the nose, but I don't see any other show doing that. Even, again, it's a different kind of comedy. This is exhaustive comedy. You got to pack every scene with something because otherwise you're not doing your job. That's what it feels like. Honest to God, I think if the three of us sat down and tried to write one of these movies, we would fucking lose our minds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it would be fun to try to write one of these movies to see if you could hack it like ZAZ, but I just don't know if audiences are receptive to this kind of comedy anymore. Because when it's done right, it's done really well, but it's done so poorly, so frequently that at this point, it's kind of, you could parody the movies that are parodying those movies. You could really metatextually parody how bad those movies are at parodying the other movies that they're parodying.
I almost want to go back and try to watch Sledgehammer from '86 because that was another police farce, but I don't think I ever watched an episode.
Sledgehammer, huh? Oh, like Mike Hammer? Is
Like that, yeah.
Huh.
It was Alan Spencer, I think, did that one, and I can't remember who was the titular Sledgehammer. David Raish, I think it is.
Harrison Page is in that. He was in Carnosaur. That's super weird. Do you know that movie? Do you know the movie I'm talking about?
Isn't that a Corman movie?
Yeah,
I saw that
where the
theatrically,
people
thank
have
you.
Carnosauruses birthed out of them, I think is what happens at one point.
That came out like 2 weeks before Jurassic Park.
Wow. I mean, I can tell you which of the two is better.
Carnosaur.
We did that as an episode on the Culture Cast in the first year of the show. I remember enjoying how fucking weird it was.
There it is.
Bunch of John Carl Buechler puppets.
Oh yeah, those puppets are amazing.
Those
And
puppets are wild.
I think Clint Howard is in that.
He is.
That's not a surprise.
So is Raphael Sbarge.
Nice.
I will tell you that the kind of parody that this does, I can't even think of a contemporary example anymore. That's how like weird it is to think about these things were so popular for a while, and then like the woman in the window who was wearing white or whatever. Like this is the most recent one. It was a show.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm gonna watch it because we talked about that on that episode of the Culture Cast. Like, Jesus Christ, they had a show parody,
but it wasn't funny.
That's what I kept hearing. Like, even when I watched the trailer, I was like, wait a minute, are these jokes?
Yeah.
Because by the title, it's apparent that they're spoofing the movie you had to watch for that episode with Amy Adams. They're doing those rear window gaslighting the main character thing. And it's on my watch list to watch, but that's what I kept hearing was like, it's hard to tell if they're jokes.
I kept waiting. And in this, you can't wait 20 seconds.
You can't turn away or you'll miss 5 jokes.
Exactly.
Really? Like that's almost a negative even for the show. I mean, again, the show hasn't let its foot off the gas. Not all the jokes land, but they haven't stopped bombarding us with the jokes.
So apparently the garbage cans that he hits are supposed to relate to the episode number.
Really?
So I was paying attention to that on that Out of Order episode, the third.
Right.
And they don't show the cans in that one.
You're right. They just have the audio.
Yeah, and they do in this one, and it's 4 cans.
And it's 4 cans. I distinctly remember how many cans there are.
That's funny.
I'm assuming they cut it or cropped it so we didn't see how many cans he hit in the third episode that was aired 5th. I'm assuming. So we'll see what happens with the rest of the episodes.
Interesting.
It's kind of weird that they were so particular that they made sure to crop that out.
That's what I'm assuming happened.
Yeah. I mean, that must have been what happened.
I mean, it was very odd that they just had him hit the cans and you just hear the cans.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? That makes sense now. Never picked up on that before.
There's a lot of weird little things hidden in this show. I mean, again, there's a lot of jokes hidden in each scene, but that alone is just bizarre.
That makes sense, though. Makes sense.
Now I'm curious to read that 7th episode script and see if they even say, like, he hit 7 garbage cans.
Yeah, we will see if it continues, because they'll probably have to change it for the other one that was Out of Order as well, I guess.
Yeah, it'll just be him hitting the cans again, just the sound.
Right.
Frank hits cans.
He hits these cans.
Insert number dependent on what episode this shows up in.
Well, we'll find out how many garbage cans that is when we come back next week and talk about The Butler Did It, which was the 5th episode shot, but the 3rd episode shown. Yeah.
Yeah.
George Stanford Brown went immediately from the cameo seat into the director's seat. We saw it later on. Yeah. However that goes. Until then, Chris, do you want to tell us where we're all at right now?
In hell.
Yes.
No. We, the 3 of us, are all on weirdingwaymedia.com. Mike's show, The Projection Booth, Mark's show, Wake Up Heavy, and my show, The Culture Cast, can be found there along with this show, the show that we're all collaborating on that you're listening to right now, along with a whole host of other shows, with new shows being added, well, seemingly monthly. So that's where you can find this show and more shows, weirdingwaymedia.com.
Tune in next week for another exciting story from the files of Police Squad.